Hello everyone, so welcome to the first day of semester 2 of Algebra 1. So there's a couple things I want to remind you that your notes are going to be graded. This instruction is for more of the new students that have came to my Algebra 1 class. But I absolutely want you guys to follow along with these notes, pretend like you are in class because you are going to turn these into Google Classroom. When you turn them into Google Classroom, I'm going to grade them on completeness. Now the first thing I'm going to look for is to make sure you have the title. Now last semester I was pretty lenient in not including titles. And this time I'm actually going to give points just for assigning the title. So even if you turn something with just the title, you're at least going to get 2 points. Because again, I want to make sure that title's there to have your notes nice and organized. The second thing I want is to make sure that you actually number each and every single problem. So I want to see number 1, and then you do the example, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. I'm going to try my best to explain each and every lesson or every video, whether you're in class or whether you're watching, what exactly I want to see for finding, if we're doing your full work to get your full credit. Now, one thing that's not going to change again is the numbering and also the title. Now, if you want to write the instructions, you guys can, but I'm not going to be too strict on writing those full sentences. I'm looking again for title and the numbering. So the first 2 problems are review. I want you to find the slope of the following tables. In order to show full work in these problems, I want to see these tables. Just make it really quick. X and Y chart, write down the numbers, and then go ahead and do the math and follow along with me. And this goes for your homework as well. So if you guys remember from first semester, right, it seems so long ago, in order to find the slope, well, what is slope? It's just the change in y divided by the change of x. And if we have a table, it's actually quite easy to find the change of y and change of x, because all you have to do is go down your table and say, hey, how do I get from 0 to 1? And you'll notice that you add 1 each and every single time. That is all it takes to find the change in x. In order to find the change in y, you do the exact same thing, but this time you do it with the y's. So you can clearly see here that finding the slope, which is the change in y or change of x, is quite easy, because all you have to do is look at your values of your table and just ask yourself, what is it going up or down? Is it positive or negative, and how much is it going up and down by? So here I can see that my slope, my change in y, my slope is 2, because I'm going up 2 in each direction. I'm going to divide it by the change of x. I can notice it's going up by 1 each time. Remember, you have to reduce 2 divided by 1 is 2. So the slope of that table, the rate of change, the change in y over the change of x, is a positive 2, which makes a lot of sense. So you can notice it's going up by 1 in the x direction and then going up by 2. Let's go ahead and do the next one. I'm going to change colors so these don't mix up too much. Now notice that in my x direction, I'm adding 1 each and every single time. Notice in my y direction, I'm going from -2 to -5. Now I know that seems like it's just going up by 3, but you have to be careful. It's going actually down because you're technically subtracting a -3 each and every single time. Now make sure, I tried my best. I see that they're quite ugly. I try to draw my arrows there to show what direction I'm going, because it's important to know you have to go the same direction for these tables to find the slope, the change in y over change of x. So the slope of this table would be the change in y, which is a -3. That is a semicolon, by the way. Let me make that a little bit nicer. The change in y divided by the change of x, which is also just a positive 1. And then again, you got to reduce it. Anything divided by 1 is itself, so that means my final slope would be a -3. Now notice that there's some purple, there's some yellow. I want to see these in your notes. I'm going to be very specific. There was too many times where I allowed notes on the test and students were confused because their notes didn't make sense. They just were random answers and numbers everywhere. So I'm going to try to show you guys how that could better be useful, especially when you guys are learning this or when you guys are taking a test. All right, so keep in mind that today is just an intro to Unit 12. Those first 2 problems that we did was from last unit, and that really was just to get us ready for graphing these lines. But first, I want to make sure you understand how to fill in points into a specific equation. So let's start here. I have 3 examples that I want to go over. The first one is, well, let's read the instructions first. Given the following equations, complete the following table. Show work for full credit. So keep in mind that I want to see everything numbered. Don't forget to number them. I want to see your equations written, and I want to see a really quick x and y chart with those following values. Now notice that this equation here, this very first one, is y equals 3 times x plus 1. Now notice that when I gave you the table, I gave you an x value. I want you to find its y value. So what I want you to do here is plug in a 0 into your equation and figure out what its y is. Remember that we did this towards the beginning. We call these ordered pairs, but you're doing the same thing. So let's start with plugging in a 0. Y is going to equal 3. Now remember that if you have 3x, it's times. I like to show it with a little dot there. 0 plus 1. Now remember those PEMDAS rules that we went over. Remember, there's first thing you want to do is parentheses. There's no parentheses here. There's no exponents. There is multiplication. 3 times 0 is 0. So we get 3 times 0, which is, of course, 0, plus 1 equals 1. So that means that when you have an input or an x value of 0, you get an output or a y value of 1. And again, I want you to do this for 1 and 2. So y is going to equal 3 times whatever x is plus 1. So y is going to equal 3 times what x am I inputting this time? I'm inputting a positive 1, and then don't forget to add 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 equals 4. So notice that in this situation, when your input is 1, your output is 4. All right, let's do 2, and then we'll call it good. Y is equal to 3 times whatever x is. I notice I'm getting a pattern here. So I'm going to plug in my 2, and then add my 1, because that is what my equation is telling me to do. Now 3 times 2 is a positive 6, and then finally plus 1 equals a positive 7. So you'll notice some patterns right now. Again, what I really want you to focus in is just plugging in these values. In our next class, we're going to talk about slope, where does it appear from the equation, etc., etc. But what I would say, the value of today is doing these kind of problems, being able to see an input and find its output correctly. All right, so make sure you include all that work. Let's do this for these following problems. So y is equal to negative 5x plus 6. So again, I always like to put a little dot there. It reminds me that it's multiplication. So y is equal to negative 5 times x. Plug in the 0 first, plus 6. Negative 5 times 0 is 0, so you're left with a y is equal to a positive 6. Let's go ahead and input the 1 into our equation and figure out what the output is. Y is equal to negative 5 times a positive 1 plus 6. Negative 5 times 1 is a negative 5 plus 6. Y is equal to a positive 1. All right, last but not least, let's input our 2. So y is equal to a negative 5 times 2. Notice that I changed it up here. I put my multiplication in parentheses. It means the same thing. I kind of like to do the parentheses because it kind of shows me to distribute. And it just does, I have it. But it doesn't matter if you choose the little dot for multiplication or parentheses. Negative 5 times 2 is a negative 10, plus 6 is a negative 4. So y equals a negative 4. So again, while you're doing these problems, make sure you're following along, completing these, because you are going to have to turn in these notes to prove that you did them. You will get points for them. It's kind of nice because they're kind of freebie points in terms of just follow along, make sure you're paying attention. So following the next one, y is equal to x. Now, a lot of students, remember when you have a single x, you have a 1 there. 1 times whatever x is. So if you're not quite used to it, put the 1 in there. I'll plug in whatever your value is. In this situation is 3. If you just want to plug in the 0 and you understand it, that's okay too as well. Just make sure that you're doing whatever you need to help you. 1 times 0 is 0, minus 3. 0 minus 3 is a negative 3, so y equals a negative 3. All right, let's go ahead and plug in a 1. Y is equal to 1 times my x. I'm inputting in 1 this time, minus 3. 1 times 1 is 1, minus 3. 1 minus 3 is a negative 2. So that means I have a negative 2. When my input is 1, my output is a negative 2. All right, one more. Y is equal to 1 times 2 minus 3. Again, all I'm doing is following along my equation. 1 times 2 is 2. Minus 3 is a negative 1. So there we go. So that's all I want you to do. I gave you 6 of these problems on your guys' homework. Shouldn't take longer than about 10 minutes. Again, make sure you number each problem. Make sure you're showing work for each one of these for full credit. And that's it for today.